Let's talk about a thought. Not a passing, casual thought, like wondering what you'll have for lunch, but an unwanted thought. A thought that crashes into your mind like an uninvited guest, carrying a message that feels alien, terrifying, and utterly against who you are. It might be a sudden vivid image of causing harm to someone you love. It might be a relentless question, "Did I leave the stove on?" that plays on a loop even though you checked it 3 times. It might be a blasphemous notion in the middle of a quiet prayer, or a graphic sexual thought that feels so wrong it makes your skin crawl. If you've experienced this, you are not alone, and you are not your thoughts. This is the landscape of Obsessive-Compulsive Disorder, or OCD, and it's a condition fundamentally misunderstood by our culture. We throw around "I'm so OCD" when we color-code our bookshelves, but this trivializes a serious and often debilitating psychological disorder. At its core, OCD isn't about being neat or tidy. It's about a glitch in the brain's alarm system, a catastrophic mismatch between a thought's content and its perceived meaning. The engine of OCD runs on a 2-part cycle: the obsession and the compulsion. An obsession is the unwanted intrusive thought, image, or urge that I just described. It's not a thought you have, it's a thought that has you. It triggers a tidal wave of anxiety, doubt, and visceral discomfort. This is where the second part comes in: the compulsion. A compulsion is any behavior, mental or physical, that you feel driven to perform to neutralize the anxiety, to fix the thought, or to prevent a feared outcome. The crucial thing to understand is that the compulsion is not a pleasure. It's not something you want to do. It's something you feel you must do to escape a terrifying sense of impending doom. Let me give you a concrete example. Meet Sarah, a brilliant and compassionate young woman I worked with. Sarah's obsession was a fear of contaminating her newborn nephew with a deadly disease. The intrusive thought was an image of her hands, covered in invisible germs, touching the baby and making him gravely ill. This thought wasn't a reflection of her character. In fact, it was horrifying to her precisely because she loved her nephew so much. But when that thought struck, the anxiety was unbearable. Her brain's alarm was screaming, "Danger!" So she developed compulsions. She would wash her hands until they were raw and chapped. She would avoid visiting her sister altogether. She would mentally review every surface she had touched for the past hour. The hand-washing, the avoidance, the mental review, these were her compulsions. And in the short term, they worked. For a few moments, the anxiety would subside. She'd feel a fleeting sense of relief. But here's the tragic reinforcing loop of OCD. That momentary relief is the disorder's greatest trick. By performing the compulsion, Sarah's brain received a powerful, unintentional message. That thought was dangerous. The ritual did prevent the catastrophe. You were right to be so anxious. It's like a fire alarm that's overly sensitive, going off because you burned a piece of toast. If you then call the fire department every single time, you never learn that the alarm is faulty. You just reinforce the idea that the smell of burnt toast means the house is burning down. Sarah's compulsions were her way of calling the fire department for a false alarm, and in doing so, she never learned that the initial thought, the intrusive image, was just a piece of mental toast, not a 5-alarm fire. This is where we get into the psychology of what's really happening. A key concept is thought-action fusion, the belief that thinking a bad thought is morally equivalent to carrying out the action, or that thinking about something makes it more likely to happen. For someone with harm OCD, thinking about pushing someone in front of a train feels, in their gut, as bad as actually doing it. For someone with what we call magical thinking OCD, having a blasphemous thought during a church service feels like it will bring about divine punishment. The brain has fused the concept of a thought with the reality of an action, and the emotional response is accordingly catastrophic. The other psychological mechanism at play is inflated responsibility. Individuals with OCD often feel an overwhelming, hyperinflated sense of personal responsibility to prevent harm. Their internal monologue says, "If I don't perform this ritual and something bad happens, it will be my fault. I could have prevented it." This is an immense, crushing weight to carry. It turns everyday life into a minefield of potential catastrophes that only they can avert through their compulsive behaviors. So, if compulsions are the problem, what's the solution? The gold standard evidence-based treatment for OCD is a type of cognitive behavioral therapy called exposure and response prevention, ERP. The name sounds technical, but the principle is elegant. ERP is essentially a systematic, compassionate, and highly controlled way of teaching your brain that the alarm is faulty. Exposure means voluntarily and deliberately confronting the thoughts, images, objects, and situations that trigger your obsessions. We don't throw you in the deep end. We start with what's moderately anxiety-provoking and work our way up. For Sarah, an early exposure might have been looking at a picture of a baby while allowing the intrusive thought of contamination to be present in her mind. A later exposure might have been touching the floor of a public bathroom and then holding a picture of her nephew. Response prevention is the crucial second half. It means choosing not to engage in the compulsion afterward. After touching the floor, Sarah would agree not to wash her hands, not to mentally review, and not to seek reassurance from me that the baby would be okay. She would just sit with the anxiety. And this is the hard part. It feels terrifying. But something remarkable happens when you do this. You learn, on a deep emotional level, several vital lessons. First, you learn that anxiety is a wave. It crests, it feels unbearable, and then, if you don't fight it, it subsides on its own. You don't drown in it. Second, and most importantly, you learn that the catastrophic outcome you feared does not happen. The baby does not get sick because you thought a thought. The house does not burn down because you didn't check the stove a fourth time. Through ERP, you break the associative chain. You decouple the obsession from the compulsion. You teach your brain's amygdala, the fear center, that this particular signal is a false alarm. It's like physical therapy for the mind. It's difficult, it's uncomfortable, but it rebuilds the neural pathways, restoring your freedom. Beyond the clinical framework, living with OCD requires a fundamental shift in your relationship with your own mind. It's about learning to be an observer of your thoughts rather than a prisoner of them. Imagine you're sitting by a stream, and each thought is a leaf floating by. A person without OCD might see an ugly, scary-looking leaf float by, think, that's an odd leaf, and watch it drift away. A person with OCD sees that same scary leaf and jumps into the stream to grab it, to inspect it, to prove it's not dangerous, to make it go away. But in grabbing it, they get wet, they struggle, and they give the leaf immense power. The goal of therapy is to learn to stay on the bank, to acknowledge the scary leaf, there's my contamination thought again, and to let it float on by without engaging with it. This is a skill called mindfulness, and it's a powerful ally in the management of OCD. If you see yourself in this story, please know this. Your intrusive thoughts are a reflection of what you fear most, not what you desire. The very fact that they are so horrifying to you is proof of your good character. The content of the obsession is often the inverse of a person's core values. The most caring people get harm thoughts. The most devout get blasphemous thoughts. The most meticulous and responsible get checking and doubting thoughts. Recovery is not about making the thoughts go away entirely. Our brains are thought-generating machines, and sometimes they produce junk. Recovery is about stripping these thoughts of their power to terrify and control you. It's about learning that you can feel anxiety and still choose your actions. It's about turning down the volume on the mental noise so you can hear the music of your own life again. It is a journey from being a hostage to your own mind to becoming its compassionate, confident master. And that is a journey worth taking.